Here's a subject I think would be super helpful to anyone building a van or thinking of building a van. What would I do differently if I built a van again? Welcome to the channel. I'm Andrew, an illustrator and producer who built my own van and have been living in it with my wife for the last 3 years. We are selling this van and starting a whole new adventure, but somehow my brain is still thinking very far into the distant future to the day when I might build a van again and what I would do differently if I did. Diffused lighting. I installed these puck lights and they really light up the van. Whenever I use them, I immediately turn them down to their lowest dim setting. Because the lights are so close to your face, they hit different. Instead, I would do some sort of diffused lighting scenario where the light bulb never has direct contact with your eyes. It's always hidden behind something like a roof slat, like recessed inside a roof slat so that it's not directly meeting your line of sight. Here are a few builders that I assume have learned this same lesson. Just having the light bulb that close to your face is different than having it 5-10 feet away on a ceiling nearby. No shower. There are a few van and lifestyles that I could see us using our internal van a lot more than we have and do. A long-term stay at an RV park, or similarly if we were hosting at a campground, we would remain hooked up to a water hose and to a ground gray water tank indefinitely. But the lifestyle that we lived for the last 3 years was not conducive to being hooked up to a hose or gray water tank, where we would stay in a particular town for 3 months while Heather was under contract and use the van, parking it nearby, using it as a commuter vehicle. So if I were to build a van again intending to live the same way that we have this time, then I would exclude a shower from the build. Once I found out that there are gyms like Anytime Fitness that you can go in and have a private shower instead of the locker room style gym stalls, once we found those style gyms, we were perfectly fine with showering at the gym while we were out and about on the road. It added up to a pretty good experience and it got us going to the gym as well. A dinette conversion or some sort of two-person working space. Now that some of the space from the shower has been freed up in our next build, I would prioritize a two-person workspace. I did not design the seating area that I did with 2 people at laptops in mind, and I should have. I honestly don't know what I was thinking. Oh, younger Andrew, if I could only show you what I know now. Everyone with a dinette conversion says that making the bed every night is a pain in the ass, and I get that. It would certainly conflict with our schedules where Heather goes to bed and I often stay up late at night working. What would have worked best for us is if I would have designed the layout with a 2-person desk area in mind. I don't know exactly how I'd do it, but it would be nice if we could work at the same desk sitting next to each other like we weren't able to in this current build. By the way, we've been married 16 years, together 23, and I still would love to just sit and work right next to her at a desk. Pretty good stuff. No Lagun Mount. This table. I don't know why anybody's not talking about this, but working at a desk on a Lagun Mount is not stable, especially as time goes on. I see everybody using these mounts and nobody's saying it. I don't get it. Get used to the wobbles, your posture adjusting to stabilize the table as you work. It's actually not all that bad. You hardly notice it when you're in the flow state, but I wouldn't do it again. I'd build a fixed desk situation. Once again, one that 2 people could work comfortably at for long hours if need be. I would install the bed long ways and have a king-size mattress. This is gonna sound crazy to some van builders, I know. When Eamon and Beck did their newest van build, they put a separate piece of mattress at the foot of the bed that would actually fold down and become a bench seating for the seating area next to the bed. So it is possible to fit a king-size bed. There are creative ways to put a bed long ways in a build without taking up too much space in the van build. I'm almost 40, and the older I get, the more in touch I am with what I need. And I would be perfectly willing to sacrifice counter space and space for other things in order to have all that sleeping room when I go to bed. I would still buy the RAM Promaster, but I would place the bed lengthwise with our heads in the back and our feet this way. That would give us just a ton of room, which becomes super important by the way, when you're living in a confined space for a long period of time, to be able to stretch out fully when you're lying down. If I had to design a flap that folds down in order to make room for it, then so be it. I'd figure it out. Some of these high-end van manufacturers do amazing maximizing of space with their builds, and you can learn a few tips on creative ideas to make your layout work from just kind of browsing some of their layouts and builds. A smaller fridge further from the bed. While I cook a lot and we usually have the fridge full of things, it's a marine focused fridge model and it is a little excessively big for our van build. And when trying to save energy and maximizing space, little differences in the sizes of things like this can go a long way. I would try to find one that is a little shorter, and maybe a separate freezer door wouldn't be as important to me in my next build as it was in this one. I've learned that I just really need my ice cubes. Any fridge that supports ice dependency would work for me. Also, the fridge does have a bit of a hum to it, so I would put the fridge further from the bed next time, or early on in the build process, I would put my head where I think I'll be sleeping and turn on the fridge if I could, just to get an idea of the acoustics and how that hum will affect me while I'm sleeping. Maybe even under the bed would have been better, or at the foot of the bed. And of course, if we did get the king size bed and we're sleeping lengthwise with our heads at the back of the van and our feet this way, then the fridge being this close to the bed wouldn't have been a problem at all. A smaller and a more high up mounted propane tank. I should probably explain why one chooses propane over electric like I did in the first place. Electric heating units like an induction stove, while generally perceived as safer, do use up a lot more electricity than everything else. And throughout my research, I found that propane has a general fierce stigma around it that is not necessarily justified. In fact, some of the builders that I was watching and admiring most were using propane systems. I wanted a furnace, stovetop, and water heater in my build, and propane was just the easiest and simplest way to get all three of those systems fueled. The alternative, if you didn't know, is the induction stovetop that I already mentioned, and a gas or diesel heater that is hooked up to the van's existing fuel line, along with an electric water heater. That meant installing the fuel line system for the gas or diesel heater, as well as sucking up a bunch of power from the induction stovetop and the water heater, and I just didn't want to do those things. I preferred to do the propane system and knock out all three in one go, if you will. I researched how basic propane systems work and felt that I could wrap my mind around it and build one pretty easily. If there is a propane leak, you will smell it. Simply don't ignore the smell if you do, and you'll be fine. Okay, but back to the point. I mounted the propane tank and bought the model that I did because I saw another couple with the exact same setup who had driven all over the continent. But it's the only thing that I've received concern over when others are viewing my van, particularly from potential buyers that are responding to our listing and asking about the safety of it being mounted underneath there. I would still mount the propane tank under the van. I still think it's the best place for it. I would just find one that hung lower, even if that meant less total propane storage overall. I have a 12-gallon horizontally mounted propane tank, and I think I've seen others that are like 7 gallons that are just longer instead of big like this. They're a little longer. So less propane overall, but maybe more safety, hypothetically. I did install the airlift system underneath there to keep the back end of the van from ever sagging, so that the propane tank being near the ground or lower than the axle would never be a problem. No water heater. Without the shower, the water heater becomes less and less practical. At that point, the only time you'd be using a water heater would be to do the dishes in the coldest days of winter. And that would be too rare for us to have justified without the shower in the build. And as a bonus second part, here are things that I would definitely do again if I built another van. The large water tank. Yep, A 46-gallon water tank, if you have the room for it in your build, is sublime. We live in this thing full time, only fill up water once a week, and use water a bit more generously, I imagine, than van livers with smaller water tanks. It's a perk and a selling point, definitely. The AC unit with the 3000 watt inverter and one Maxxfan is perfect. Our cooling systems are now optimized. We spent one summer without an AC unit in Los Angeles during the heat of the summer, and it was brutal for me. Heather would go off to work and I'd go find shade, sometimes running the van for hours to use the van's AC unit to keep me cool so that I could get my work done for the day. Never again. We had two Maxxfans originally, and while they do a decent job at what they do, they cannot save you from 100-degree heat. The next summer, I took out one of the Maxxfans in the back and installed this Houghton 3400 AC unit. And going forward, we sought out contracts with electrical hookups for the summer months. It's perfect now. The propane furnace heats up the van nicely in the winter, and we keep the AC unit running pretty much constantly during those 100-degree days. Pretty large gray water tank too. I don't know that you could fit a bigger gray water tank than the 20-gallon one that I did, but I'm glad that I maximized the space under there as much as possible, because I certainly wouldn't want less. I prioritize convenience in this build, and not having to look for places to constantly dump the gray water is a huge relief. We have to dump the gray water every 4 or 5 days, being at the 20 gallons that we're at now, and that works just fine.
Hello?
What's up, girl?
I'll go in there.
Okay, thank you so much. My wife bought me a sandwich. Aww. The Sea Head toilet, okay. This one's interesting. So the one thing that I love about this toilet is that the pee jug can be replaced by any 1-gallon milk or water jug that you can buy at any grocer, so that when that thing gets disgusting, you can throw it out and get a new one anytime. See my first video, my van tour video, for more information on that. While the Sea Head company went out of business a few years ago, I would try to build a toilet similarly to the one that we bought from them while they were still around. Because I don't think any of the toilet manufacturers are making that an option. And because I remember seeing a DIY tutorial for one of these compost toilets that you can make yourself that closely resembled the Sea Head. I'd search out that tutorial and build something like that again, so that I could have a system that allows me to dispose of the pee jugs and replace them as often as necessary. The ceramic tinting on the windows. They have a particular type of ceramic tint that blocks out UV rays from heating through the windows as easily as they do, which, as you know, in a van build, windows are one of the biggest sources of thermal crossing and insulation weak points. You don't even have to tint this type of tinting. You can do a 10% tint darkness and just install it for its UV benefits. Being able to limit the interior of the van to heat exposure was worth the few $100 that I paid to do it, and I'd definitely do it again. In fact, hit up an installer and ask about the ceramic tint if you'd like your car to be a little less hot as well. It's good. The RAM Promaster. Yes, I'd still get the Promaster. I like how straight the walls of this van are. Every other model has a heavy curvature to the walls. I like how low it is to the ground because I'm rarely an off-roader. I like the shape of it. Like, I like the curvature of the hood and everything for some reason. I like that it's a gas and that I can find a mechanic for it anywhere without any need to find a diesel mechanic, or even worse, to be pigeonholed into a Mercedes certified diesel mechanic. I like how wide it is. That was a factor in choosing the Promaster for the first time and intending to place the bed perpendicularly like we did. And even with a king size bed placed lengthwise, I'd still love to have all that room side to side to work with. I'm comfortable with how it drives and operates mechanically. I do drive very cautiously and safely though, so that's probably contributed to smoother sailing mechanically. I wish Honda or Toyota made these types of vans, but we don't live in that dimension. Somehow. The open feel. Okay, last thing, and a decent ending to this video. The open air feel of this build has definitely satisfied me. When I open my eyes in the morning, I see quite a bit of space, relatively. Maybe not relative to you, but relative to a New York studio, maybe. When I wake up, I don't see the wall of a shower stall or the wall of a cupboard, and I love that. I see the light trickling in through the corners of the windows and diffusing down through the Maxxfan. giving everything a faint glow. It's such a cozy way to wake up. The aesthetic of that is one fantastic way to start my day, and I'd keep it the same in the future. And being that I wouldn't put another shower in my build, that wouldn't be too hard to do. To clarify, we are not building another van. If I did build something again, I'd be more into building a bus conversion or something bigger. This is all just hypothetical and documented for posterity. You're welcome, future generations. I hope this video gave some interesting tidbits. Please like and subscribe and make it a peaceful rest of the day, 'cause I love you.